Now, discuss.
Thank you very much.
The words of the exam paper.
I'm
Discuss.
delighted. Can I say I'm delighted that this has taken place? These kind people from Google, when they interviewed me, they said, "Why do you think that Leo has not received the recognition that it so widely deserves?" And I forgot to tell them at the time. Only recently, in the last few weeks, Jeremy Clarkson on television devoted a whole program to the development of the computer. I think it was part of a series, Inventions Which Changed the World. And during the whole of that thing, he mentioned every computer that you could think of from Babbage onwards. And Leo didn't even get a mention. And so I'm really delighted that we've got together to do this. Thank you.
Please, forgive me. When I mentioned our guests, I forgot three of our most important guests. Jim Norton, President of the British Computer Society, Rachel Burnett, the new chair of the Computer Conservation Society. And if you're talking about remembering things, the Computer Conservation Society is right at the center there. And it itself is part of the Science Museum. It's a joint product of the child of the Science Museum of the British Computer Society. David Hartley, who was the ex-chairman of the Computer Conservation Society. So, a late worker.
Can I make some points from the viewpoint of the Conservation Society? First of all, I can't resist the opportunity to take Google to task, particularly Evan Schmidt. It's not that we don't do any innovation anymore. We don't do enough. And we teach ICT in schools, and we shouldn't. We should teach computer science, and that's bubbling away, I think, quite nicely now. But I'm a Cambridge guy, and just think about, we've got ARM. That's damn successful. Thank you very much. Not enough success. You've got a lot of enterprise and innovation going on in this country, but not enough. I agree. Yeah. So, but say there wasn't any.
No, I don't think you said.
Well, that's what you said.
No, I don't.
Whether you are quoting Schmidt, I don't know, but you said none.
I don't think I said
that.
If I didn't say none, I certainly didn't.
The Computer Conservation Society, yes, it's doing its bit. It's not doing enough because there's so much to do. And Frank was the first to say we should be doing much more about recording histories and so on, and we should, and we're going to look into that. But what we do a lot of is building replicas or restoring old machines. We have an incredible track record in this country, unrivaled anywhere else, where we have in museums around the country working old computers. There's nothing so boring as a dead computer. It's all right saying, that's good, that's a chassis, and that's fine. But you go to Manchester and you see a replica of the baby working. I hope in 3 years' time you'll go to Bletchley Park and see a replica of EDSAC working. And to our mind in the CCS, this is important for educational reasons to show people what it was like in those days, actually working. And that, I think, is a very important contribution. Now, well, God forbid, you were able to do a replica of the Leo, because it's a massive task. But that will be one way to get it remembered. Yes. But there will be a replica of EDSAC, all being well, which is its elder brother.
There is actually a full Leo 3 in a warehouse in Edinburgh at the National Museum.
So I understand.
Sadly, it doesn't have any cables.
Yeah,
Putting cables to it is quite the problem.
Indeed, and you could consider getting that working. What you need is a lot of voluntary effort.
Yes.
But there's plenty of that going on, sadly, not in the Leo sphere.
Yeah.
You know,
The EDSAC thing is getting close to you.
there are different reasons. I mean, partly, one remembers Leo, it's a kind of sentimental thing. Here's something that was great and was forgotten. But that's not really the important thing. the important thing is, as Frank says, what are the lessons we learn from it? And it's so typically of British industry in the 20th century that we innovate and then can't maintain and
follow through is not
it's that
there.
particular case study. In the 19th century, we were the pioneers which actually developed everything, and Britain had a huge reputation. All that went away, largely to America, but also to Europe, and so on. And we keep on failing. And this is a very good example of something that was spectacularly successful and completely disappeared because the means to bring capital towards it, the idea of innovation and successful business didn't seem to correlate anymore. Frank has a grandson who has invented a brand new electronic musical instrument to make electronic music. Today he's getting support from his university, from so-called sandpit enterprise things. Things are happening to support enterprise in a way that it didn't happen in our days, but still far, far too little. And there are far too few people who really look upon innovation and enterprise as something that is worth pursuing. So it's that's what we need to find out to try to analyze what is it that went wrong and what can we do right. Although there are some things that are being done.
I could start a dialogue here, but I think we need to go. Jim.
Frank, first of all, thank you on behalf of the BCS for the invitation today. And I think it's very important we remember the technology. But for me, the important thing about LEO is actually the people in the process. And I think we have forgotten as an industry so many of the techniques, so much of the good practice that was pioneered by the team around this table. The idea that came out of that original systems research team. You sat down and thought about what you were trying to do first. And you very carefully planned it, you very carefully flowcharted it, and you didn't rush to try and write some code. And I think there's a whole chapter of material there which is about really good practice, which we've forgotten as well, not just the technology.
And that's very much what I had in mind when we think about the legacy of David Cavanagh.
Yeah.
The meticulous standards he set.
Do you think perhaps that if Jay Lyons hadn't died, the memory of the computer might have survived? I know that we got sold off and ended up not as Leo Computers, but Leo Computers was associated with Jay Lyons, and Jay Lyons really died in a quite sad and definitely unsatisfactory fashion.
But that's true of the computer industry in the UK altogether. I mean, the successor things, ICL, was then bought up by Fujitsu, and Fujitsu finally disposed of it. So it faded out.
Would any of the journalists present like to ask some questions?
I'd like to pick up on the point made about the people. Because for me, as someone who originally was an aerospace engineer for many years and then moved into radio reporting and producing, and then became interested in history and made these radio programs about Leo and other early computer projects, it was the human stories that were really interesting and that I could direct to the popular audience, the people who would be turned off just by the technicalities of it. And I remember one of the things, like I think it was you, Frank, who remembered the excitement when developing Leo. You were able to record in the log went past point of previous stoppage. And it showed the pioneering enthusiasm of it. And that is the sort of thing which could enthuse younger generations today to get involved in computer science and not just using computers.
But we have so many stories that are untold. We were discussing earlier. My background is a communications engineer, in particular in packet switching, right back at the dawn of packet switching. And I doubt that our friends in Google actually know that the real inventor of packet switching was a lovely man called Donald Davis. You know,
Yes.
I'm certain their school children don't know.
Yes.
Actually, it was Paul Barron, but he's
Well-
always got lost.
But,
By a phone company.
I think it's absolutely right that, you know, that inspiring human stories are
Yeah.
incredibly important. And we were lucky enough to see the other night the premiere of the Alan Turing film, which is going to be shown on Channel 4 on the 21st. And it's a wonderfully human story. And hopefully people who see that on prime time on Channel 4, you know, a small number of people will be inspired and it will change their lives as a result of seeing it. And I think it's that need to inspire people with brilliant stories and examples that is one of the ways forward.
And yes, I would still say that the people, absolutely, you're absolutely right. But it's not the people. It's what they did. It's actually it's actually what they achieved. The particular things that they did.
Well, I think there's two things, isn't
It's
it?
two things, yes.
One thing that we've talked a lot about is the teaching of computer science in schools,
Yes.
which you mentioned, which is a problem, in that people are basically told how to use PowerPoint and spreadsheets at the moment, rather than the coding that makes computers work. So that's one very important part. But I think beyond that, or perhaps before that, young people need to be inspired to want to get into that more technical discipline.
Yeah.
Can I just make one quick suggestion?
Yeah.
Since Google are here. 17th of November 1951, so we're coming up across 60th anniversary, you have your famous doodles. Google.co.uk. Would it, you know, can we suggest that
I think we have looked into it. I'm not sure that I can promise that we're going to succeed. It's a very difficult task.
I'm sure there's sure it's not as difficult as it was to build a computer.
It's a good thought.
Can I just add, there are various initiatives going on around the history of computing, so it's not a completely barren wasteland. I mean, there's the Oral History of British Science project at the British Library, which has interviewed myself, Frank, and Mary Coombs. And there's the archive at the Science Museum of the Pioneers of Computing, which includes an interview with John Pinkerton. So there are, you know, collections of oral histories that capture the people and their stories. I think the thing we need to do is to build on that and to make sure those are developing archives, not just, you know, fixed things in time.
I totally agree. In fact, in my notes, I might have all of those as important things which are happening, and the collection of things. And the internet makes it possible to link all these things together. You don't have to have something in every place, because you can link them through the internet. So the IT History Society in the States is located in the States, but it's global and has links to everything. Carries, for example, obituaries and in its honor list of some of the great people in computing. So there are resources and they're being developed. So many people who are with us in this.
The Science Museum as well has got some pretty large plans.
Very big plans for a new gallery that will include a large amount of history of computing.